these are part of those growing pains of us butting heads and trying to find our way to move forward. But at some point in time, we are going to need to have a real conversation as a nation and to codify that within a constitution, which will be the framework that we all agree is what we're proud of.
Welcome back to Aotearoa Tomorrow. I'm Arthur Falls. It's been a while since the last episode. Sorry about that. I was doing other things. Moko Tepania is the mayor of the Far North region. Recent polling indicates that he is the most popular mayor in the country. In this episode, he joins us to discuss what it means to be part of regional government. We discuss the limitations of councils, the tension between local and central government, and the power imbalance between the two. This involves the fast-track process that's recently gone through, the RMA, the Treaty Principles Bill, and a bunch of other stuff. In his own words, Moko loves a yarn, and this was a good one. Moko, you're actually the most popular mayor in the country, apparently.
I think according to a few of the aunties that they rang up for some kind of poll, so we're gonna take it for what it's worth. I mean, I don't know. It's just a poll. What really matters is what you do on the ground. And this job, even though I'm the mayor, it's a team effort, So we just go with it.
Well, it's good to know that at least you've got the aunties on side. I mean, it's a great place to start.
Oh yeah, some of the aunties. No, it's always surprising to see stuff like this because, a lot of people, you don't get many polls. Well, like semi-scientific polling done by actual organisation rather than someone putting up like a Facebook poll kind of a thing, right? Or on Instagram. So I mean, it is what it is. And I mean, it's still only 39% approval, I think, based off the couple hundred aunties that they managed to phone up throughout over a year kind of a thing. But it is what it is. I mean, when I first got asked about this and what I thought, I kind of laughed and just said, we'll take it for whatever it's worth. But it doesn't mean that we don't have so much more work still to do or things we need to carry on about. And every single day in, day out, like, I'm hearing from people with huge issues or things that our organisation, the Far North District Council, has gotten wrong or we need to do better. And so a poll is a poll and it's showing that I'm popular for what it's worth. But I mean, I could probably go out on the street right now and find, 10 people within 2 minutes where I'm unpopular with them or our council is actually failing them in some way, shape or form. So you take it for what it's worth, but you carry on with the mate.
I mean, it sounds like a pretty tough job. I've got a whole bunch of questions, but this just brings to the fore one really obvious one. Why is the most popular mayor in the country, supposedly, why, not that I would doubt that for a second, but as you say, like polls are polls, but why only a 39% approval rating? Is there an issue? Was it 39 or 49?
I think it was 39 off the top of my head. I mean, I think that they take the people who say you're doing net good and people you say you're doing a poor job and then they minus it and that gives you your final score. I haven't looked into the full report and the numbers around what that kind of looked like. But I mean, if anything, that shows that, the vast majority are still waiting for you to get some stuff done, if it's only 39. And I know you're never going to be perfect and never going to get 100% of people on side because you have to be realistic. Even though I describe myself as being naively optimistic in life and always thinking about the glass being half full, you always have to be a realist at sometimes. But as long as I know that either myself or our council team or our organisation are doing everything we can within our control and within our power to try and do better by our people and serve them, then that's all you can give at the end of the day.
And I suppose it sort of prefigures the question that I was leading into, which is why is mayoral approval so low, right? If the most popular mayor only sits at 39%, and probably because it's very hard to balance the interests of all of these different groups within a single region.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the latest prime ministerial polling just came out, and it's even worse than that. Those approval rates. But I mean, 39%. We also have very poor voter turnout when it comes to local elections. At our last local election, I think the national average was something like 41 or 42% of people who were eligible to vote who actually voted in their council elections. So I think it goes hand in hand with education. I'm big on civics education. I've learned so much, like just being a councillor and then being the mayor, like that I didn't even know before. And I think the vast majority of people on the ground, they don't know. Some don't ever want to know and don't care. But what people do care about are the outcomes and the solutions and what they see and feel and the action that happens from an organisation like local government. So you just got to keep doing the mahi, no matter what parameters you're working with or kind of your feel on the ground. You take it and you carry on. We are representatives of our people, so trying to get across what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it is incredibly important. But there's so much mahi to do, like I said. So you kind of just there's so much work to do that I don't get hung up on things like that. Like, I don't actively think about what I need to do. I just think about trying to make about winning approval or anything like that, or trying to be more popular or trying to be liked more by people. I think people are going to care if I'm actually working to serve them, to represent them, and to fix our bloody roads here in the far north, or make sure that we are sorting out our water, wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, or making sure that we have an animal management team that's set up for success to make sure that pet owners are being responsible and we're looking after our people, making sure that we're living up to all of these beautiful policies and strategies that we have, that they don't sit on a shelf, that we actually are walking the talk across all of the things that our organisation does.
So you've listed a whole bunch of stuff. What is the mayor's role in executing these policies? So, for example, like you talked about wastewater and stormwater and drinking water. I mean, we just had Three Waters go through. Obviously, it was watered down. Three Waters was watered down. A quick note. Obviously, Three Waters has not gone through. The National Party replaced it with another piece of legislation called Local Water Done Well. The big difference was that rather than the government taking ownership of water infrastructure, it instead created a very strict regulation about how water is managed locally. This means that places like Whangarei, which has great water infrastructure, doesn't have to subsidise investment in regions which have run their water poorly, like Central Hawke's Bay. And I know when it comes to water, I always pick on Hawke's Bay. There are some other effects which are concerning, though. For one, central government now exerts tight control over one of the largest council budget items, which is water infrastructure. Also, the new legislation is designed to work specifically with a type of organisation called a council-controlled organisation. These are known as CCOs, and they're essentially companies owned by the council. One concern some people raised about Three Waters, one that I shared, was that it corporatized water and moved it in the direction of privatization. This was a legitimate concern in my view, but the CCO model is also a move in this direction, albeit a different type of move. From my perspective, much of the vision of central control that Three Waters represented was ultimately executed. The only difference is that that vision took the form of regulation rather than ownership, which stayed local. But this is kind of an example of how Labour and National are right now very similar in their view on the governance of New Zealand. Furthermore, and I know I'm going on about this, while Labour would never sell the nation's water infrastructure, a national government might actually consider it. Three Waters, even though it didn't happen, would have made that sale feasible in a way that it wasn't before. And Local Water Done Well, by moving water assets into 11 regional CCOs make the eventual privatization of water infrastructure even more likely, if not quite as likely as the original plan under Labor. So this is obviously still something that you're directly involved in, even though we do have these other independent bodies that are supposed to be managing that. You've got roads. Now, I understand some roads fall under the purview of council. Some roads fall under the purview of Waka Kotahi, or the, what is it called? NZTA?
New Zealand Transportation Agency, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's some that are sort of, I guess, both responsible. They're both responsible for. So what is the mayor's specific role in making all of these things come together and get executed?
So off the top of my head, I can't remember what the Local Government Act actually says my job is, but it's something along the lines of to lead council's long-term planning, to be an advocate for your area, and to be the chair of our meetings. So all of our decision making happens in a formal council meetings or committee meetings. We're given responsibilities under the Local Government Act by central government on what the Far North District Council has to do. How we pay for that, the bulk of it comes through rates. So we've got the local government, the Rating Act, which says what that looks like. We have an annual budget. I think this year is like $192 million. And our job as the Far North District Council is to decide how we break that up, to do all of the things central government says that we are legally required to do for our people. And then you kind of have a look at what's left over and say, what do you people think or agree that we use this for? So my main role is really to just be the best leader I can for all the people of the Far North, for our Far North District Council, and for our organisation, to make sure that we are ticking all of those legal boxes we have to tick for central government around those responsibilities, and then making sure that we are spending the money we collect from ratepayers and residents. I mean, I know we always talk about ratepayers in this game, but I think if you're a resident in the Far North, then in some way, shape or form, you're contributing to that rates take, even if you're a renter. So it's kind of like all of our residents, right? And then figuring out how we do that responsibly and in a way that we ensure we keep the community informed and enable them to have a voice at the table as well. I mean, it's not a dictatorship. Although sometimes I think, gee, if I just had the full power, I feel like I could do some pretty cool things and maybe fix some more roads if I don't have to worry about all these stupid rules that come in front of me every single day. But I mean, it's not. We live in a democracy, and the people have to be heard. The people have to be a part of what we do, and so it's taking everyone on the ride as the mayor of the Far North to say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's why we're doing it. And do you agree?
You just mentioned all of the challenges that rules create for you. And you also talked about how there's only a little bit left over after you've met all of the legal obligations that the council has to central government. What is left over after you've met your obligations to the Local Government Act? What is left over for, I guess, volitional spending for a council like the Far North?
Oh, and the honest truth is none is left over. We have to decide how much it's going to cost to do all those legal obligations, right? And then we have to rate for what that is going to cost. So we're not allowed to rate to make any money. We're not a company. We're not here to have any surpluses or anything like that. Whatever the cost is the cost, and then we have to put that on to the people to pay for it. I guess what I mean around anything left over is we've got all of these things that we need to do around roading, around actual, infrastructure, around obligations like animal control and all of that, what that all costs. And I guess what I refer to around what could be seen as left over to do kind of cool things with is still stuff that we have to do under the Local Government Act. But it's the fun stuff that people want to see, like how much money are we going to put into community grants for our people to apply to do like health, community, education programs across the whānau. How much money are we going to have left over, or are we going to put in to making sure that all of our playgrounds here in the far north have got shade sails, and we've got a heck of a lot of playgrounds, and we've also got one of the highest UV index ratings in the country, so that, you know, when it's peak summer, we spend all this money on a playground, but our kids can't even play on it because if you touch it, it's going to cook your skin, kind of a thing. So it is a really hard balancing act, to be honest, this job. And I've been in it for 5 years now, 3 years as a councillor, 2 years as the mayor. And man, every single day I'm still learning more, a whole nother language, everything like that. But you take it all as it comes. And my biggest, one of my biggest goals has always been trying to interpret this whole new world that I'm a part of, that I work in, into language and into something that my mum and dad can understand, right? Because they always like, man, half of the stuff you talk about goes over our bloody heads. Like, we don't understand it, but all we care about is that the footpath has got weeds in it, or somebody has been doing burnouts down the street, or this is going on. That people care about their everyday lives, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they have a roof over their head, making sure that they turn on the tap and water's going to come on, making sure that power's not going to just suddenly go. All those sorts of things that people care about in their everyday lives, council will have in some way, shape or form, have an impact either directly or indirectly on what that looks like. And so my job is trying to figure all of that out and take the people along for a ride as well, and make sure it's meaningful and that we live up to all the words that we say, because we always say so many bloody words. Like, our council goal is a district of he whenua rangatira, district of sustainable prosperity and well-being. Cool. Where's the district going to achieve that with the means that we have to do it?
To run through a scenario, what's to stop someone like yourself or a bunch of councillors to running on a platform that says, we're going to have tons of community grants, just tons of community grants, and lean on kind of a populist message that will involve massively increasing rates. But the only people you really have to worry about voting against something like that are the people who actually see the rates bill, right? Because, yeah, sure, renters obviously wind up paying rates bills, but they don't see the number. They don't see the word rates with a great big number next to it, right? And so there's a disconnect there. And I'm wondering, I mean, I'm literally talking about pork barreling an election. What's to stop that happening, and why don't we see that more? And do we not see it? Does that kind of stuff happen in local councils?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't really happen in this council. I don't know if it happens in other councils, but I guess it's just people. Well, you got to be reasonable at the same time. I mean, one, there's so many triggers that are going to stop that from ever becoming a reality. So, I mean, it's an election year this year. Someone could come out and promise the world, and then you get into the role and realize, one, at the end of the day, you're still only one vote around the table, and you have to get a majority vote to be able to get anything over the line. And two, you have to be able to make sure that it is financially sound, financially feasible, and you have to wait for your long-term plan year to get anything across. So there's those opportunities within the legislation around how we fund anything. So I could promise that we're going to come out, we're going to have a $5 million community fund that all of you beautiful people, if you vote for me, I'm going to give you all millions of dollars each from the Far North District Council. Cool, I get enough votes to get voted in, but then, oh heck, I'm still only 1 out of 11 voices at the table, so I have to convince 5 others to agree with me to make this even happen, for it to even happen. Then two, what does that do for a rates take? $5 million, that's an extra 5% increase in rates, because here in the Far North, around 1 million equals 1%, right? So, okay, that's an extra 5%. Then I need to figure out if it's even going to be, if we even have the headroom within our council budgets to even achieve that. Say we do, cool. Then I can finally get that across. But then, actually, are we, in doing this work, are we going to be taking away from any of the other work we're going to do? We have to get audited by the Office of the Auditor General. Is central government going to sign off? What this amazing idea that I've had and gotten voted in and are trying to action to do. There's a lot of, even though, like I said, I like to describe myself as naively optimistic. When you get into the seat, there's a lot of realism that comes with it, the realistic things that you are able to achieve. I'm very proud of the fact that at the last election, I didn't stand on any big promises. I did stand on big promises, but I didn't promise anything in terms of materially what you're going to see. What I promised to do when I first stood was I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to do the best job that I can do. But I don't know, maybe in New Zealand's a bit different. I think over like other sides of the world, you kind of see a different type of politics. But here, I mean, at a local government level, you can't really come out and promise all of these things. The other thing too is, and if you're a person of integrity, I like to think of myself as being someone with a bit of integrity. I never make a promise I can't keep, right? If you have no guarantee that you can't keep a promise if you go out to people, then I don't think you should be making it. Otherwise, it's just false words, right? So it'd be interesting to see someone try and do that. I think just like because I'd get my popcorn and just see what happens. But, I really like our culture here in New Zealand where we kind of keep ourselves in checks and balances, and we don't really see that, to be fair. But it would make for interesting drama or like a case study maybe.
So this is interesting because you've described a situation where, if someone taking this as a serious thing, not as the silly idea that I was proposing. If you want to make a plan to make some long-term change, you've got all these hoops you've got to jump through that make it hard to do. And recently we've seen the fast track bill go through that included some projects that were under a portion of the bill called Schedule 2, which meant that they achieved no external scrutiny apart from a very small council of ministers. And the whole point of that was to get through all of the hurdles that stood in the way of these things actually being delivered. One of them that's been particularly controversial has been this Sunnyvale. Is it Sunnyvale? It's the Winton project where they've got the option to buy some land, and it's in Durie, south of Auckland. And I looked at that project. It's been on the cards since at least 2016, and they've had a really hard time getting it over the line. So it's been around for 9 years. And the only reason I can really think is that there's pushback from the local council. Reasonable pushback if you look. I don't want to go into actually analysing the project now because I will do it in another episode. But it sounds like there can be tension between both central and local government when it comes to executing plans and building projects. And there are times when those two different governing bodies of a region stand at cross purposes and can become frustrated with one another. I wonder if you have experienced that kind of thing in your tenure.
Oh, absolutely, all the time, right? The other thing too is, which is frustrating, is when you get a change of government that changes the rules. So you do all of this work, and it takes a lot of time to give effect to central government legislation. Takes a lot of time. So we've got rules that we have to follow. One of those, I don't know the in depth. I don't know this project in depth down in Durie, but the way that we agree on what is appropriate or inappropriate development-wise for your area is through a district plan. Or in Auckland, I think it's called their regional plan or their spatial plan, something like that. They're different because they were amalgamated in 2010. They've got different rules that govern them. But here in the far north, we have to have a district plan. The district plan is the rule book on how you use land in our district. So you zone your land. It's a very long process with your people to agree on what those zones will look like and what development will be acceptable in an area or not. And so you go out, you ask your people, you have to have commissioners. It takes years and years to get any of these up, like 5 to 10 years before you finally agree on the plan, because there's all these checks and balances, and it's about having checks and balances on what's appropriate and what's not. Now, I could say I want to make this piece of land here in the Warawara forest a brand new hotel resort. So I want to zone it mixed use commercial. Then we've got rules that say, actually, because it's a native forest, you can never do that because it's going to stay within this zoning and we're going to protect it. Cool. We all agree with that. I can't do that. It's where you've got differing opposing views on what is appropriate and what's not appropriate is where you have these sorts of clashes. Now, sometimes those views are very, very much valid. And so if we as a council say still wanted to press on, we could get taken to Environment Court, and Environment Court will say, actually, no, we agree with their views and you aren't allowed to do that. So we'll go, okay, we'll keep it like this. It's a very hard one because we get these parameters, right? The rules of the game to play by from central government and the legislation. And then they'll come along and go, actually, the rules we set up for you to follow and for everyone to follow don't work for us for these projects. So we're going to create new rules just for these ones so that we can kind of circumvent those original rules that we gave you. So it is a little bit frustrating, to be honest, when and the rules, the first set of rules, right, the pieces of legislation that set that up, they're not perfect. We need proper, I think we need reviews around the red tape around trying to get things done. Resource Management Act is the big one that does need reform, but it still needs to be appropriate. It still needs to make sure that we've got safeguards in place for our environment and for the use of our land zones. We have legislation that comes in, then we have governments that come in with national policy statements that we still have to give effect to. We've got a regional council that will have a regional plan that sits on top of our district plan. So we've got we've got legislation, then we've got national policy statements that we have to give effect to. Then we have a regional plan that we have to give effect to. And then finally at the bottom we've got a district plan, and then the government will come along and say, we want this project to happen. It doesn't tick all these boxes, so let's take it out of the game and put it in its own games that we can push ahead. And that's where I have genuine concerns. Not on this project specifically. I don't know anything about this bloody project. But it's when you have that happen. But then how do I know that whatever's going to happen there is going to be appropriate? And where are the checks and balances with your community and with the people who are going to be affected by it in their day-to-day lives? How are we going to ensure that in a constitutional monarchy where we have democratically elected representatives for their people and everyone has a freedom of say and an ability to influence or be heard, how do we make sure that's still going to happen for those? I don't know. That's kind of the question. Where's the balance? I don't know. We can either go too far this way or too far this way. How do we make sure that we find that middle ground that is going to be acceptable for our people and make sure that we are looking after our beautiful country and our beautiful land for the generations to come? Because we can't just hit hard right now and then have nothing for tomorrow, sort of a thing.
With that all said, what's the difference between governing, say, a country and just a small region of a country? Because there is a difference, right? We know that there are different regional needs in governance, and being closer to a region means that someone who's governing in that area can better serve those interests and needs. But what is the difference of that between those two different scales of governance, I guess?
Oh, I think that's just where it comes down to like you said, to the scale. I mean, I think the leader of our country should be having a holistic view over the well-being of all the people and what that means. But one of the things that we've been seeing come through strongly through the local government sector and with our communities is something that we're labeling now localism, which is putting the power of self-determination for communities into the community's hands. So, and trusting that they're going to be able to do a better job over what they need within that, say, money envelope. So we've got a Prime Minister who looks after our entire country. At a regional level, we've got a regional council and a regional chair that looks after the region's specific responsibilities. And then at a local level, you've got a mayor, right, who looks after a specific district. Now, I don't profess to know every single part of my own community. I think that even for me, my lens is too great for the needs of, say, Waimamaku settlement, which is our southwesternmost settlement on the borders of Waipoua Forest. The Whanau district's 7,500 square kilometres. They're like 4.5 hours long and 2 hours wide. So even though I'm in local government, I don't think that every single town, or 40 of them here in the far north, are going to say, oh, he's a local mayor because we get to see him at the pub or see him at the dairy, sort of a thing, because our district's too big. But the power of localism is saying, hey, I don't need to know everything about your community and make a better decision for you, because you can make the decision for yourselves. You know what you need here. So rather than me saying, oh, I'm going to spend and I'll use, say, playground, just randomly playground. The Prime Minister, he's like, yeah, we agree playgrounds are good as a country because we've got heaps of kids and they like playgrounds. So we're going to make playgrounds illegal in this country. And then on a local level, I'm going to go, cool, they've said it's legal so we can have playgrounds. We've got a means of getting money to do that. We're going to hustle him to try and get some from him as well. So it's not just from us, because we want to have equitable funding models, and people in the cities, it's easier for them to build and have playgrounds because they manufacturers there, but up here it's going to cost us more. So you give us a little bit of money to get it going. But then I don't think it's my right to come along and go, yay, I've got this money. Now I'm going to build this playground for you because I think it's a good idea. Actually, you know what it looks like. And so what if I said, here's what we've got to enable this playground, but you know what it should look like, what it should feel like, where it should go, how it should be. And so let's let you decide what that looks like. I think that's kind of the different levels of what I see as being leadership and being that localism approach around making sure that people are empowered to make decisions that affect their own lives in the day-to-day. It's not my right to go into a little town and say, this is how it's going to happen. It's not the Prime Minister's right to come into a little town and to say, this is how it's going to happen. But it's our job to unlock and empower our communities to make decisions and live their best, beautiful, lovely lives.
So it's interesting you say all that, because naturally that's going to be your perspective as a regional mayor. And I interviewed Eric Crampton from the New Zealand Initiative that, colloquially, this is unfair to call them this, but people think of them as ACT's think tank, right? They're kind of the super economically liberal. He's totally focused on localism. And weirdly, funnily enough, I actually saw that a lot of his policy recommendations that he talked about when I interviewed him, Labor actually implemented them in the previous 2 terms that they were in. I forget which term, sorry. But at the same time, we've just had National, who I would see aligned with that particular think tank, steamroll through all of this fast track stuff that really tramples on the ability of councils to determine, or for local people to determine what is actually happening in their particular region. And so you've described how government can be obstructive for you, and obviously government has issues with local obstruction, but you've made the point that government can just rewrite the rules, as they have in this case, to get all this stuff through. So we've got, on the one hand, lots of talk and lots of policy around driving localism, but a lot of action that kind of tramples on that whole idea. I mean, I've just made a statement. I haven't actually thrown a question in there, which is really what a more skilled interviewer probably would do. But I wonder if you have thoughts about this phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, it's about walking the talk. I mean, if you believe in localism, then enable it, empower it. What does that look like? At the same time, we're an incredibly small country on a global scale, like 5 million people, right? There's cities around the world that have got a bigger population and bigger remit than our entire country. But it's a little bit, I don't know, I definitely agree there. There's a little bit of hypocrisy that comes into some of the things where you get told to do one thing and enabled, but then like you also have competing legislation or policy or narrative that is in direct contrast to what that looks like. We as a council, just on fast track as an example, like we as a council voted in opposition to the legislation and shared some concerns around it. But at the same time, we did enter a project for the schedule for fast track. We did that, and it was for I live here in Kaikohe. Kaikohe is the seat of our whānau district council. And then within the oral submission, I said, I know you can call us hypocrites because here we are saying that we've got serious concerns with this piece of legislation, while at the same time we actually are putting a project up. Now, we're putting this project up because we have done what we would expect every single project has done, or that you will do when you check it, and we have gone through the process of ensuring that this is ready for approval and has all those checks and balances within it to do that. We're solely going through this because we think it might be able to get it done faster, which is going to save us money, make us more environmentally friendly. We have the backing of our wastewater treatment plant Hapu working group, who also agree that fast track is a mechanism to get us there. So this project is ready. I can't promise that all of the other projects that you've got, or projects that could be here in the far north, are going to have had those same checks and balances that our own project has had. So we're happy for ours to go up. Should it be worthy, it will help us get over the line faster. But we have no way, shape or form are going to know if any other projects that get plonked on us are going to have met those same strict requirements that we have of ourselves. So yeah, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes trying to work within these sorts of parameters. But just like I said, that just comes with a part of the job, and you just got to take everything as it comes, and then you kind of just react accordingly. Where I want to get to for local government, for my role, for everything, is moving beyond always being reactive. And we really need to, I think, for the far north, for our country, need to be looking much more proactively into what we need infrastructure-wise, what we need social investment-wise, what we need environmentally, because all we do is like tutu on the edges with pieces of legislation because I didn't like that part of it, I didn't like this part of it. We are in a constant state of reacting to the community, reacting to legislation, reaction, where I want to like have this like proactive, strategic look at what we need to do, how we need to get there, take everyone along on the ride, get agreement, and then just kind of crack on, you know.
How do we do that? What actions could you, or can you prescribe actions that would move us in that direction?
I think it's a fundamental review of what our country looks like. And that's where we get into like kind of some deep stuff, but I actually think we do need like constitutional reform for our country. I mean, our country is incredibly young. We're like one of the youngest in the world. Like the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in 1840. You know, like we're only like 185 years old as a country, but nowhere as a country our pieces of legislation is like we just kind of add on, stack on, make it fatter, make it taller, make it wider. But other than in 1840, right, where here in the far north in Waitangi, we had the Crown's representatives and my own ancestors come together to kind of codify what this new country could look like. We've never had a constitutional conversation like most countries do. They'll have a constitution that everyone agrees on. These are the parameters of what we agree we want our country to, the values of our country, what it looks like, what it feels like, how it's going to have a strategic view for taking us forward. So I do think that we need, we do need to codify a New Zealand constitution to take us into the future. I just think we're still growing. I mean, we're so young as a nation that, when you see stuff go on and we've had heaps on, especially around the Treaty of Waitangi in this country, these are part of those growing pains of us butting heads and trying to find our our way shaping forward to move forward. But at some point in time, we are going to need to have a real conversation as a nation and to codify that within a constitution, which will be the framework that we all agree is what we're proud of. You talk to any American, right? And I'm not saying let's all be like bloody America, because heck, but you talk to an American, right? They know the fundamental values and rights of what they agree makes them Americans, US citizens through their constitution. If you talk to anyone in Australia, like the Commonwealth of Australia was created through a Constitution Act, which brought together those states and said, this is what we agree is going to be the parameters of how we work. We're going to agree that every state is going to have, regardless of population, an equal number of representatives in our Senate, which is going to sit on top of our House of Representatives, which is going to be proportionally elected, to be a check and balance over town versus country, all that sort of stuff. Right now in New Zealand, because we are unicameral, we only have one chamber, right? Our upper house was abolished because they're kind of just signing stuff off back in the day. But we've just kind of had 185 years of governments coming and going, this is what I want, so I'm going to make a rule about this. And then another government saying, I didn't like that, so I'm going to take that away and put my one in. And then another government saying, oh, I'm too hoha, I don't have enough time to fully take that one out, so I'm just going to change it a little bit. And so we don't have something that all New Zealanders have just sat down and had a yarn about to agree, like this is the way we want our country to be. And instead we've just had successive governments that just come along and so I'm like, I'm going to vote for them for this. Okay, they get in for 2 seconds, for the blink of an eye, and they're able to change it this way. And so, yeah, I reckon if we want to have a proactive and strategic outlook on us as a nation, we need to sit down, have the conversation in the corridor, and agree to a constitutional framework on how we move forward as a nation.
How do we get to the point where we can sit down? Because, we'd have to see real numbers on how people feel about, for example, the Treaty Principles Bill that was highly divisive. Māori make up about 20% of the population, and I can see why they were upset about that. I read the bill myself, and it didn't seem to say anything at all that I could understand legally, right? It was really weird. It seemed like it was just a bill that was designed to wind everyone up and get everyone aggro at each other. Maybe it did mean something. I don't know. I never felt it explained properly to me, and I couldn't understand it myself. But it does feel like there's tension, not just between Pākehā and Māori, but also, within along other axes about how we want to run the country. And, Labor just had 2 terms, and then we went to National, and National's not doing that great right now in the polls. And if we switch to Labor again, I've never voted for either party. I'm not particular, I'm not very impressed with the way either of them run. But it seems like we don't have strong alignment in this nation as a population, or maybe strong enough alignment to sit down and have that mature conversation.
No, and we're still on our journey. Like I said, though, we are an incredibly young country. At some point in time, we're going to have to. We will, I think, naturally sit down and, most countries, that happens because they end up having like some kind of civil war, or there is a huge trauma to that population of that nation, which means they have to. Now, because we're so young, and because I don't see us sparking out into bloody civil war anytime soon, right? Not in the modern age. I think that we're going to naturally progress to a point where we do end up sitting down. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the trigger point. Actually, I think that this treaty principles bill is a part of one of those triggers that is leading us on this one, where you're like, oh wait, hang on, someone can just come in and then kind of like propose a bill that is going to, without really having a real conversation with people on the ground, start to build what the framework looks like of what we are going to do, and then a part of what is being decided in this. And this is one of the reasons why we as a council opposed the treaty principles bill, was because now you've decided, without asking anyone, but you've decided and put it in writing, that you are going to give iwi that have settled more rights over iwi that have not settled. That's one of the principles, is that, like, everyone's treated the same. Unless, of course, you've had it in legislation through a settlement bill that your iwi will get these certain specific rights because of that. Now, that's completely unfair. Who are you to say that that is the parameters that we should work with? And for us here in the far north, we've got two very large iwi that are both unsettled yet. For whatever reason, shape, or scope, that's not for me and my opinion as mayor to give comment on. But now you're saying that Ngāpuhi, our largest iwi, or Ngāti Kahu, one of our iwi up north, we as an organisation are not going to engage with them in a partnership level across these metrics because simply for the fact that they haven't settled, but their cousins just over the hill, we are, and they're going to have more rights. So it's kind of made like second-class citizens. It proposed things that just fundamentally have been like, hey, why is this going to happen? And that was because a minor party got in and got it into their coalition agreement that that's going to happen. So we've had that as kind of a trigger point, I think, on us going, hey, we need to have a real conversation around what we believe in, how we believe it, and how everything should operate, so that we don't just have every 3 years someone coming in and imposing their kind of will on us. And having a legal mechanism to be able to do that, because we don't have a constitutional framework which sets the scene on how we want our country to be.
That was really well said. So do you have any messaging that you want to get out, by the way, just stepping out of the interview for a second? Do you have any messaging that you want to, any questions you'd like me to ask you so you can get them down on a bit of media?
Oh, no, I'm just always up for a good yarn, eh? As you can tell, I'm a bit of a yarner. Just jump in and kind of see where it takes me. But no key messaging really. Is just cool to have a chat, and yeah, I can do anything.
Oh, well, this has been super food for thoughty, because I've got I read Stephen Joyce's book, and I actually read it twice and took heaps of notes, and I'm going to go through them all because it was really interesting. Stephen Joyce was this kind of shadowy dude who was behind the scenes in the National Party. He actually kind of reformed and corporatized them, and after they lost to Helen Clark.
I think it's on the drawer next to my bed. Actually, I got the book too. I haven't read it yet.
I mean, it's pretty dry. It's pretty dry, but I mean, I got through it, and I'm not a good reader, so that tells you a lot. It was really, really interesting. Anyway, and it's just really interesting to see the perspective of a hard-out business person who just wants to get stuff done, and he's kind of involved in a whole bunch of interesting stuff that's going on, like the Winton development and Jury and stuff. He was accused of cronyism, and really validly, right? Like, really validly. I'm not saying he's a crony, right? But, well, I mean, there's a lot of smoke there. If there's no fire, I'd be really surprised, But a lot of what you've talked about is touched on in that book, a lot of the frustrations. And it seems to me that the frustrations sit on both sides of both local and national government. And there just is there's a lot of frustration and a bit of bitterness, but not a lot of clear paths forward. And I suppose it just takes the right people coming in at all the right levels to achieve some kind of solution to these tensions.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it takes. Consensus view. Everything is about taking the community along with you, so that they can understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and trying to get that breakthrough where, if I still disagree, I will still agree that this is going to happen for the reasons you've outlined. But for me, I just personally disagree. But I am comfortable enough that it is going to happen because it's fundamentally not going to impinge on me as an individual, my rights, or my XYZ, that sort of a thing. And that's what I'm always trying to do. That's what I think everyone's always trying to do, is you are trying to take your people along with you, to ensure that they are at least comfortable with where you're headed. And that's always going to be a challenge. But yeah, as a politics nerd, I kind of always like seeing the different models, ways, shapes, and forms that people do try and take their people along for the ride, or the ones where they're just like, I don't actually care. I don't care whether you agree or disagree, and this is what I'm doing. And yeah, to hell with it, sort of a thing. So,
well, thanks so much, Moko. This has been really, really helpful. It's, you're exactly the right person, I think, that I needed to talk to for this, I guess, grand research project. So, yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and hopefully I get to catch up with you in person sometime up there.
No, absolutely. Hey, you're welcome.
Thank you, Moko. And thank you to everyone who listened or watched this episode. Please like, subscribe, and tell your friends. You can find this on Spotify or any other podcast platform, and also on YouTube. I'll be back with more at some unspecified date in the future. Till then, take it easy.